My friends, the Iran War just dropped its Marine Corps DLC. There's gonna be a lot of new maps. As we speak, thousands of US Marines are being scrambled across the globe and rushed to the Middle East. Yeah, 2 weeks after the beginning of the war. Hold on, what? Why weren't they already deployed to the region before the war? Don't ask too many questions. You don't understand, everything is going according to plan. Anyway, we're talking about US Marines. So their mission is simple. Prepare an amphibious operation against Iran.
What, we some kind of suicide squad?
Looking at the perfect planning of the current military operations, what could go wrong, right?
Yo!
So in this video we will explore where the Marines could strike, but especially at what cost and to what end. Option 1. Take control of Kharg Island, Iran's vital oil export hub handling 90% of its crude. Option 2. Seize the islands of Qeshm and Larak in the Strait of Hormuz, and establish forward bases to secure shipping lanes. Option 3. Maritime security by escorting commercial traffic, boarding vessels, and interdicting threats without a full invasion. You've probably heard about at least one of these options. But I think there's a fourth one that the media didn't talk about. And if I was to bet, I would put my money on this one. Option 4. An amphibious landing against the Iranian naval base of Kharg. An ultimate coincidence, on the 28th of February 2026, the CIA, think tanks magically mentioned the rebellion in Iran's Balochistan province. But before I can tell you about it, a quick word from today's sponsor. Hey guys, real quick before we keep rolling, today's video is sponsored by Chat LLM by Abacus AI. And honestly, this is the one AI tool you will use every single day. Nowadays we're swarmed by LLMs. ChatGPT 5.2, Claude Opus 4.6, Gemini 3 Pro, Grok 4.1, DeepSeek. So many to choose from. Chat LLM gives you everything in one place for only $10 a month. Route LLM automatically picks the best model for you depending on your prompt. Same for AI image and video generation. Chat LLM supports Nano Banana Pro, Grok Imagine, Seedream 4.5, ChatGPT Image Gen Model, Kling, you name it. Tired of AI sounding texts? Just click Humanize and problem solved. Oh, you forgot to make a PowerPoint for tomorrow's presentation. Abacus AI builds full professional presentations instantly. The star is Abacus AI Deep Agent, a beast that autonomously codes features, builds apps, websites, AI agents, hits GitHub with PRs, and handles deep research like a full team. All this for just $10 a month. Way cheaper than separate subscriptions for all these AI services. And with huge token limits. No more juggling tabs. Try it now by clicking the link in the description below. So in the introduction, I laid out 4 possible options as to where the Marines could strike. But before we can look into that, we have to analyze the order of battle of this 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit heading towards Iran. On the 13th of March, the New York Times reported more Marines and warships being sent to the Middle East. In there, they mentioned about 2,500 Marines. The problem is that other sources mentioned 5,000 troops. So what is it? But regardless, whether it's 2,500 or 5,000, it's not enough to invade Iran. Especially since everyone knows they're on their way. Top planning. You're just not getting it. The Marines might just disembark.
And it's gone.
So how many troops are we exactly talking about? You see, the 31st MEU is one of 7 Marine Expeditionary Units. Those are rapid response forward deployed forces from the US Marine Corps designed to be the first on the scene in a crisis. The Marine Expeditionary Unit most closely mirrors the Marine Littoral Regiment that we covered in one of my previous videos. And I guess everybody's gonna witness why it was a very stupid idea. Anyway, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is based in Okinawa and is composed of 2,200 Marines and sailors. Very important detail. An MEU is not just infantry, it's a fully integrated naval task force. The primary platforms transporting these Marines are the USS San Diego and USS New Orleans amphibious transport dock ships. Meanwhile, the centerpiece of the 31st MEU is the USS Tripoli, an America-class amphibious assault ship. Here's satellite imagery of the USS Tripoli racing towards the Middle East. The fact that the 31st MEU is being redeployed all the way from Japan to the Middle East 2 weeks after the start of the war says it all about the meticulous planning of US leaders in this conflict against Iran. What are we gonna learn next? That they're running out of ammo?
No!
These 3 vessels constitute the full Tripoli Amphibious Ready Group, a self-sustaining expeditionary strike capability. But that's not all. For surface escort and force protection, the Tripoli RG is screened by 2 Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyers, and most likely a submarine as well. If we add up all the embarked Marines and sailors together, we approach 5,000 US military personnel, but only a fraction of them are actual riflemen that can storm a beach. Did you say storm beach? Booyah, let's go boys! The main limitation of the 31st MU is that it's composed of a single combat ground element, which is itself based on a single battalion landing team, essentially a reinforced battalion. Those are the guys that will actually launch the amphibious assault. In practical terms, the 31st MU can only disembark roughly 1,200 Marines. It's not a lot, and they're going to be on their own. As part of the Force Design 2030 reforms, the US Marine Corps disbanded all tank units and significantly reduced its armored ground combat capabilities. That's how the ground combat element now fields only a modest armored component, approximately 12 to 14 amphibious combat vehicles for ship-to-shore movement, supplemented by 4 to 8 LAV-25s from the attached light armored reconnaissance detachment. As you can imagine, Iran is trembling right now. So what's the plan? Because you're not going to invade Iran with 1,000 dudes, even if they've been prepped by Bunny Blue. Now, of course, the Marines are always part of the first wave. That's exactly what happened during the Vietnam War. On the 8th of March 1965, 3,500 US Marines from the 9th Marine Expeditionary Brigade landed at Da Nang to secure an airbase. These were the first combat troops to be officially deployed. By the end of 1965, US military personnel strength in South Vietnam reached approximately 185,000. And Trump was not one of them. Now, according to the latest news, on March 20th, the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group with the 11th MU departed San Diego and is now heading to the Middle East as well. This move suddenly doubles the number of disembarkable Marines from 1,200 to 2,400. This screams perfect planning. Say the war is won. Now redeploy Marines from Japan. Say the war is won again. Okay, now send in another unit of Marines. There's also speculation that the 82nd Airborne Division, or elements of the 82nd, could also be deployed to the Middle East. And if this is true, this could confirm option 4 that I will present in this video. Option 1. Take control of Kharg Island. This is the scenario pushed by the mainstream media. Here from Politico, and same thing here on Axios.
Would really go take Kharg Island.
And we also have Kharg Island.
The military assets on Kharg Island were destroyed.
This is exactly why I have a feeling this is all maskirovka. All part of some deception and definitely not the main objective. Because to me, it just doesn't make sense. But for the fun of it, let's just run the scenario. Kharg is located north of the Persian Gulf, about 30 kilometers from the Iran mainland. This island is very strategic because it handles 90% of Iran's oil exports. Seizing it could cripple the Iranian economy and serve as a major leverage. That could explain why on the 13th of March, the US launched a series of preparatory airstrikes against the island. A reported 90 sites were targeted by US forces, such as naval mine storage facilities, missile bunkers, and other military infrastructure, while deliberately preserving the island's oil export terminal. Capitalism goes brrrr. Now, according to this footage of the US airstrikes, the island's airport runway was struck multiple times, as well as a surface-to-air missile system positioned on elevated terrain, plus a military communications node 250 meters away. We can believe that once Iranian defenses are significantly degraded, the 31st MU could execute a rapid disembarkation of its battalion landing team, even if the first wave would only consist of 300 troops. That means any stubborn Iranian defense of Kharg Island could end in a fiasco for the Marines. Now comes the plot twist. The 31st MU will arrive from the complete other end of the map, 1,600 kilometers away. This just doesn't make sense to me. That would mean the 31st MU would have to enter the Gulf of Oman, push through the Iranian blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, and steam another 700 kilometers north to Kharg Island. During this time, it will face countless threats like mines, missiles, drones, and unmanned surface vessels. So I think we can cross out amphibious assault against Kharg Island. That's why some analysts believe the 31st MU could instead launch an air assault. From the Arabian Sea, the Marines could be flown aboard some of the dozen MV-22B Ospreys operating on the USS Tripoli. At the same time, such an operation could turn into a complete disaster, especially when we see how US leaders are just winging it. On May 12, 1975, Khmer Rouge gunboats seized the US container ship SS Mayaguez and its 39 crew members, claiming a violation of Cambodian sovereignty. This came only days after the fall of Saigon. President Gerald Ford wanted to appear strong and his administration launched a hastily planned rescue operation. Sounds familiar, eh? In the morning of the 15th of May, 220 US Marines launched a helicopter assault on Koh Tang Island, but the assault met unexpected heavy resistance from entrenched Khmer Rouge defenders. That's when US commanders realized the crew members from the Mayaguez were not on the island anymore. You know why? Because they had already been released. This entire assault was for nothing. In the end, the Marines lost 38 KIA, 50 wounded, and several helicopters as well. Even worse, 3 Marines were left behind during the chaotic evacuation. They were then captured and executed. What a complete fiasco. You can be sure that there won't ever be a Hollywood movie about it. More Special Forces. Okay, for the sake of the argument, let's say the Marines take hold of Kharg Island. What then? Nice PR victory.
And we've won. Let me tell you, we've won.
But Kharg Island is tiny. Sure, you have some urban areas and industrial zones, but overall there are not a lot of places to hide. With no air defense, these Marines are going to be sitting ducks for Iranian drones and missile strikes. And we saw the damage they inflicted on US bases in the GCC. And good luck carrying medevac under enemy fire. Same thing for sending reinforcements or supplies. The US already evacuated most of its bases in the GCC. So how do you think they're gonna hold Kharg Island? I think it's just unsustainable. That's when we have to ask ourselves if the US actually needs physical control of Kharg Island with all the air power they have available. And if the US really wants to take control of Kharg Island, let's be honest, they don't need to redeploy the Marines that were stationed in Japan. In my opinion, for such a mission, you could simply conduct a raid with special forces and use Kuwait as a staging ground. This leads us to option 2. The Marines could attempt to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by seizing the islands of Qeshm and Larak, as they establish control over key terrain dominating the shipping lanes. Now, in comparison to Kharg, Qeshm is vastly bigger, nearly twice the size of Bahrain, thus offering significantly greater operational depth and maneuver space. Additionally, Qeshm lies literally right off the coastline of mainland Iran, so in theory they could keep an eye on everything that's happening around. Qeshm is also relatively urbanized, as it is home to about 150,000 inhabitants. There's the big town of Qeshm and a multitude of smaller settlements. But suddenly that also means you need a sizable force to garrison the island and keep an eye on the locals. And think about it, with today's technology, the inhabitants of Qeshm will be able to record and pinpoint the exact location of all US forces on the island. Already there we can smell the fiasco. With that being said, key features on the island include an airport that could be critical for rapid air reinforcement and resupply. There's the set of hills that could form potential sites for anti-access area denial systems, plus a developed harbor and port facilities. Oh, and check this out, there's also a Portuguese castle.
What are you doing here?
Long story short, the famous Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque established a presence on the island starting around 1507. However, by the 17th century, the Portuguese were losing their grip on the Persian Gulf. That's why in May 1621, a Portuguese force of about 2,000 soldiers landed on Qeshm. With the help of 1,000 local Hormuzi auxiliaries, the Portuguese expelled the Persian garrison and built a strong stone fortress over the next months. However, this foreign encroachment provoked Shah Abbas I of the Safavid dynasty. That's how, starting in June of the same year, 25,000 Persians besieged the fort, but suffered heavy casualties in countless frontal assaults. The Portuguese were winning. That's when 9 English vessels ruined the party and joined the siege in January 1622, and the Portuguese garrison surrendered shortly after. And let's just say the Geneva Conventions were not a thing yet. Hold on, where did I want to go with this? Oh yeah, all this to say that in the modern age, Qeshm still plays a strategic role in the control of the Strait of Hormuz. Just like in the past, it could be used as an FOB at the junction of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. So those were the pros. Now as for the cons, the Marines will be exposed to Iranian fire. They will have to deal with 150,000 hostile locals, and that's if they even manage to capture the island. Qeshm is described as a fortified IRGC outpost with underground missile cities. It's also the headquarters of the 112th Naval Brigade. There are multitude drone facilities, various coastal batteries, and an entire network of layered defenses. Allegedly, if this information is correct, a couple airstrikes won't be enough. Amphibious ships of the 31st MEU could launch LCAC high-speed hovercrafts from a maximum distance of 50 nautical miles, or roughly 100 kilometers. That would allow rapid beach assaults while keeping the vessels of the amphibious ready group somewhat protected. But check this out. We just have to look at the map. This means they still would have to penetrate deep into the Gulf of Oman. And we all know the dangers of pushing too deep. There could be long-lasting consequences, because they'll be fully exposed to the entire array of Iranian weapons as they approach Qeshm. It could turn into a real kill zone with no escape. The same thing could happen to US naval forces to what happened to the Black Sea Fleet. It's like walking right into a trap. But it gets worse. There are a lot of Iranian speedboats operating exactly in that sector. For example, on the 18th of March, we saw some of them launch hit-and-run attacks on an oil tanker. In one of the latest attacks, the speedboats were geolocated right here, exactly where the 31st MEU would stage its amphibious assault on Qeshm.
Madness. Madness and stupidity.
And even if the Marines opt for an air assault, remember that scene from Edge of Tomorrow? Exactly, that's if they even reach the island. And this time they won't be able to go back in time. And even then, how is the US command going to supply these troops in the highly contested Strait of Hormuz? Personally, I just find it very risky just to establish an FOB when you can safely position the same forces just on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. This leads us to option 3, a simple maritime security mission. This is the lowest risk profile. No large-scale amphibious landing required. Operations would center on small, specialized boarding teams, VBSS detachments, and maritime interdiction units conducting targeted vessel inspections, mine countermeasures, drone neutralization, and escort of commercial traffic. Thing is, to be efficient, the US Marine Corps would still have to deploy the USS Tripoli inside the Gulf of Oman, but at a safer distance. Sort of. From there, the 31st MEU could use the F-35Bs and AH-1Z Vipers on board to take out Iranian unmanned surface vessels, drones, and speedboats. In theory, this could allow merchant vessels to be escorted in and out of the Persian Gulf. Simultaneously, the Marines could also board Iranian oil tankers. It's not far-fetched. This is exactly what US forces did against Venezuela back in December. There was the oil tanker Skipper, the Panamanian flag tanker Sentries, the Marinera. Some pursuits extended beyond the Caribbean, like for the Bertha and the Veronica. Veronica. Sorry. In this footage, we can observe helicopters approaching the Veronica, followed by multiple teams of Marines rappelling down and taking control of the vessel. And although I spoke of the 31st MEU, turns out it's the 11th MEU and the Boxer IRG heading to the Middle East that is specialized in this type of warfare. Now the problem is boarding Iranian vessels essentially means boarding Chinese oil tankers. For sure it would mark a clear escalation. But if there's any plan, that could be it. Disrupt the Chinese economy. The US already cut off China from Venezuelan oil, and phase 2 of the plan could be to cut off China's oil supply coming from Iran. And then I don't know, it's World War III. You thought your life was boring, buckle up. While this maritime security mission prevents the high-intensity risk of an amphibious assault, just like when the US Navy was deployed in the Red Sea against the Houthis, it still imposes prolonged exposure in one of the world's most contested choke points. There are also sustainment challenges of such operations to consider. All 3 options require exposing warships and embarked forces to persistent Iranian threats in a confined battle space full of mines, drones, unmanned surface vessels, and various missiles. and this for very limited gains. That's why I want to present you with option 4. Are you ready? Because it's rock and roll. An amphibious operation to capture the Iranian naval bases of Kharg and Chabahar.
You serious?
Yeah, and there are very rational reasons why the US would do this. Reason number 1, the US Navy already hammered both these naval bases in the opening days of the war. We already covered this in depth in the following video. Long story short, most of the Iranian warships deployed there were decommissioned by force. We can also believe that the US Navy achieved air and maritime supremacy over this part of southern Iran, making any large-scale amphibious assault far more feasible and at a lower risk. Disclaimer, I'm not saying the US has air supremacy over all of Iran, just on this part of the country. Reason number 2, it's far from Tehran. A key advantage of securing a foothold near the Chabahar Bay is its position in Iran's southeasternmost region. This approach largely bypasses the formidable Zagros mountain range, which acts as a natural defensive wall against Iran's western and southwestern flanks. This means amphibious assault ships like the USS Tripoli and USS Boxer could stage, regroup, and launch operations from the open waters of the Gulf of Oman and northern Arabian Sea. These waters are farther from Iran's primary anti-access area denial drone and missile concentrations around the Strait of Hormuz and Persian Gulf, making them significantly harder for Iranian ballistic and cruise missiles to target effectively. Disclaimer, I'm not saying it's completely safe, but it's safer than penetrating deep into the Gulf of Oman. And on top of that, the nearby Lincoln Carrier Strike Group could cover the entire amphibious operation. Reason number 3, Kharg and Chabahar are relatively small urban areas. Now, you're gonna tell me Qeshm has a population of 150,000 and it's a huge problem, but the 280,000 inhabitants of the Chabahar County is not a problem. Yeah, well, we'll talk about it in point number 5. This lower urban density means key objectives could be secured with about 2,500 Marines. And here's another coincidence. The Marines of the 11th MU led an exercise last November in a landscape that strangely looks like southeastern Iran. And then they did another one in the same type of environment a month ago. Both locations also offer valuable port facilities, and capturing these intact would deliver immediate logistical advantages. There's also an international airport in Kharg, the only one within Iran in a 600-kilometer radius. It could serve as forward operating base for tactical airlift and enable the rapid insertion of reinforcements, such as the 82nd Airborne. Reason number 4, once a US amphibious landing secures the Chabahar Bay area, the position offers strong defensive advantages. The surrounding landscape consists primarily of flat terrain, arid plains, and low rocky hills, with minimal vegetation to be reported. There are also no large urban areas in a 600-kilometer radius as well. This open, largely unobstructed landscape would make any Iranian counterattack very difficult, if not impossible. The US Air Force would detect them well before they even come close to Marine defensive positions around the bay. On top of that, there are only 3 roads going in and out. These effectively funnel approaching forces along predictable axes that can be defended by a relatively small force. Reason number 5, Kharg and Chabahar are located in Iran's Baluchistan province. And I think this is the most important element for you to remember. The Baluch people are spread out across the borders of Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And although they're an ethnic minority in Iran, 3 to 4% of the total population, they make up the great majority in Baluchistan. They number 2 to 3 million people in this province alone, and maintain a distinct Sunni Muslim identity in contrast to Iran's Shia Persian core. Different ethnic group, different religion. And point number 3, there has been a low-level insurgency in this region for many years now. Iranian security forces often clash against separatist groups like the Balochistan Liberation Army. This means we can believe Iranian regime control remains weak and contested outside major urban areas. So this means the local Baluch people from Kharg and Chabahar could perceive the Americans as liberators. Or in the worst case scenario, they're just going to be neutral. This means US forces won't have to worry about guerrilla warfare in their rear. And if the US Marines establish a foothold in Baluchistan, they could rapidly recruit and arm Baluch insurgents, just like they did with the Kurds in Syria. This means the US could expand the operational zone with minimal additional boots on the ground. The US could even ease the pressure on the Pakistani army by recruiting Baloch insurgents operating in the western parts of the country, and redirect them to fight the Iranian regime instead. It's a win-win situation. And you know what, the CIA has been working on it since 1980. And as a reward for those watching until the very end, check this out. On the 28th of February 2026, the Middle East Forum published this article titled, "This may be the Kurds and Baloch's only chance for generations in Iran. Those who have endured the regime's oppressive policies must secure recognition and the right to self-determination." Well, what a timely coincidence. That same day, New Lines Institute also wrote, "Fissures among Iran's ethnic minority groups are poised to break open. If they can't take down the regime directly, they're just gonna create chaos." As you can see in that case, the plan could be to break Iran apart. That's all I have for you today. See you in the next one.